Jenkins is the most popular CI server out there, and it is no wonder that you may want to automate your Postman tests with Jenkins. In this tutorial, I will show you how to do that by learning how to use Newman, generate reports, and integrate everything in a Jenkins job. If this sounds like what you're looking for, let's begin. To get everything up and running inside Jenkins, there are a few steps we need to take. First of all, inside Postman, we need to make sure that we can actually automate this collection run. So I'm going to use the collection runner to make sure that we can run this collection in essentially one click. After this, we're going to try to find a way to get the data inside the collection and to run it using Newman, which is a CLI tool allowing us to run Postman collections. And once everything is working locally with Newman, then we can go to Jenkins and get everything up and running there. With that being said, let's first jump into Postman. And this is the collection that I'm going to use for this example, but essentially any collection out there should work without any issues. This collection has a couple of endpoints, and it is essentially building a workflow. So you will see here that I'm having a status endpoint, and I have here an endpoint getting, for example, a list of tools, and every request also has some basic API tests inside. So in this case, I'm just checking for the status code, but essentially every request here has a test. I'm getting a single tool, then I can create an order, then I can get all orders, I can update an order and delete an order. It's not really so important what this API does, but what's important is that it works and that it has this test. So just to make sure that we can indeed automate the execution of this API, I'm gonna go here to the context menu, click Run Collection, and simply start the collection runner. So if everything passes here, it means that this collection is essentially in a state where we can take it to the next level essentially and start automating it. And in order to automate this collection run, the next tool that we need is Newman. Newman is a CLI tool. It means that we need to open a terminal to run it from there. If you don't have Newman already installed, first of all, you need to have Node installed. And I highly recommend that you always install the long-time support LTS version of Node. And this is available for Windows, macOS, or Linux. And you will find in the video description detailed instructions on how to install each of these tools, just in case you don't have them installed locally already. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to simply go ahead and open a terminal. I'm going to write here node -- version. So I'm just going to make sure that I currently have Node installed and that is working. So I'm going to see here the version. And going back here to the Newman documentation, just in case I don't have Newman installed, I will have to run this command npm install -g Newman. This will install Newman on my computer. And after Newman has been installed, I can simply run here Newman -- version. I'm gonna get the current Newman version. If you're getting here some warnings, don't worry about them. As long as you see here Newman printing out this version, it means that Newman has been installed properly and that you can continue with the next step. So now we have Newman installed locally, but how do we get access to the collection that we have here? In Postman, there are essentially three ways on how you can do that. You can simply go ahead and right-click here on the collection, go to export, and export this collection as a JSON file. You can put it inside a Git repository and store it there. It has the disadvantage that you have to do that all the time, so anyone working on this will have to import it, make a change, export it again, you'll have to import it again, so on. So this is one way how you can do it. The other way is to simply, again, go here and share the collection. You can go here and select with a JSON link. And what this will do here is generate this link that you can see here. You can simply copy the link. You can go here, write something like Newman, run, and simply paste a link to this collection. And now, congratulations, you have managed to run this collection from Newman. The problem with this approach is that this link that you see here, it will not always contain the latest changes. So whenever you're making changes to the collection, you have to go back and click update link. So for most use cases, this is not really the best way on how you can ensure that this is working properly. But anyway, just doing this initial step is very, very important. Now, some of you already at this point will have some errors, will have some issues running the collection. We'll get here some tests that are failing, or maybe some requests cannot be executed. In probably 90% of the cases, the problem is with the variables you have defined. Either you have an environment, and you'll see here I don't have an environment, but you could have here an environment which contains some variables and you haven't exported that environment. Or maybe you have exported the environment, but you haven't really specified the initial value. So let me show you for this collection. I don't have an environment, but I'm still using some variables. So I'm going to go here on Edit, go to Variables. And what you will see sometimes is that the initial value is not being set. For that reason, when you're getting some unresolved variables and things like that, make sure that you set here initial value, otherwise it will not work. And also, if you need to export an environment, all you have to do is look here inside the Newman documentation and find the respective parameter for specifying an environment. So for example, I'm going to search here for -- environment. And you will see here, you can specify an environment with -- environment and then specify a file or an address. Now I was talking about another way of getting to this collection. And that other way is called the Postman API. So essentially, whenever you have a collection in your account, this is being synchronized with the Postman servers. And you can use an API to get your collection. And in order to use that API, you have to know about it and you also need a key. So let me show you what I'm talking about. This is a public workspace from Postman. And this is a collection describing how you can use the Postman API. So essentially, inside here, collections, and I'm going to try to get a single collection, right? So just going to go ahead and copy this address, go back here, paste it here, and you'll see here we need a collection ID, right? So in order to get a collection ID, simply go to your collection, and you'll find here on the right-hand side this info button. And this is the internal ID of the collection. This is what you need. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, go back to my API request, and add this here as a path parameter. I want to try it again. And what I'm getting back is a 401 unauthorized, and I'm getting here an authentication error telling me that the API key is invalid. Now I haven't specified any API key, but we will specify an API key. Going back to the documentation, we're gonna open the documentation from here. And you'll see here that it says requires API key, and we can send it as a header or as a query parameter. So I'm gonna set it here as a query parameter. These are the query parameters. And let's type in something like foo. Okay, so this is still not working. Now, in order to get this API key from Postman, all you have to do here is go to Account Settings. And from the menu that opens here, go to Postman API Keys and generate an API key. And let's give it a name so that we know why we created this tool. I'm going to name it Jenkins tutorial. And generate it. I'm going to simply copy the value. Make sure you store this value somewhere. Then I'm going to go back. And unfortunately, what I had before disappeared. So I need to start again from scratch. Again, I'm going to copy this. Let's put this in a variable called API key. And the URL will be this one. And we can also replace this with the ID of the collection. I'm gonna go here to info, copy this ID, close it. And now I have the collection ID. So now I can run this request, and what I'm getting back here is essentially my collection. It's the information that I have inside my collection. You'll see here all the tests and everything. And what I can specify in Newman is exactly this address here. So I'm gonna simply copy it. I'm gonna run here Newman, run. And now you will see that this collection is failing entirely. So the exact same collection has worked previously, and now it is not working anymore. And probably wondering, why is it not working? It was working in Postman like seconds ago. And if you're looking closely at what's being sent here, you will see here that the address of the API is missing, right? So we're not sending this request where we should send them. And it says here invalid URI. So it says here HTTP and then /orders. So this is not our API. So previously I explained about this variable. So you'll see in this case, these variables are not being exposed. Previously in the other link, they were exposed, but they're not exposed here. So I'm gonna edit this collection and go here to variables. And I'm totally free to specify any other values here. So whenever I'm sharing this collection, I'm sharing here the initial value. The current value is not being shared. So what I can do here, I can go to each individual value. And if I just want to persist the same value, I can simply go here and click persist. But if there are some secrets, maybe I want to use or share the secrets, or maybe I don't want to share any secrets at all. So I could write here something totally different to be shared. But in this case, I'm going to simply click here on persist all. And I'll go ahead and save this. And this is a bit the beauty when you're using the Postman API. We can go back to our request, run this again. And now it is working. So any changes that we make to our collection will be automatically reflected when we run Newman. And what we're getting here is essentially a quick summary of what has happened, how many requests have been executed, how many tests have been executed, and so on. Did any test fail? In this case, everything is working without any issues. So super important, always think about the kind of variables that you're exposing. And if you're unsure, like what does your collection contain, simply use Postman here. Use Postman, build your request here, and take a look inside your collection. If you're searching for, let's say in my case, base URL, I will see here where this variable appears, but I can also see if it has been defined and what is the value where this has been defined, right? So if you cannot find your secrets or your address or whatever you're looking for, so I should look for something like HTTPS column / / so I can see it inside here, and if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. So that's the main idea around using this API and exposing these variables. So right now you'll see here both variables are empty. If I'm running this again, you will now see that both variables have a value. So this is why previously it didn't work and now it is working. So make sure you check that inside Postman. Most of the time when we're running Newman, we also want to generate some reports. And actually one of the most popular reports inside the Postman community is the HTML reporter from Danny Dayton. And this is the htmlextra reporter. It generates a very, very nice report. So what we're going to do is we're going to also try to use this reporter. Now, because this is an additional package, we need to install it as well. So simply going to run this command. And again, if you're getting any warnings during the installation process, don't worry about it. In this case, you cannot run Newman reporter htmlextra and get a version. This is not how it's going to work. But at this point, it will still be installed. So don't worry about whatever you're seeing here in terms of warnings. We'll see in a second how that works. Going here through the documentation, you'll see here that in order to specify this reporter, we can do something like -r or -- reporters. I generally prefer to use the full name because I know exactly what I'm doing. So inside here, simply gonna run the previous command. So I'm running Newman against this collection, and then I'm specifying reporters, -- reporters. And the previous reporter that we used was a CLI reporter, so I'm gonna manually add it as well. Additionally, I'm gonna generate here the htmlextra reporter. Now, when you're specifying the reporters, it's very important how you write this. This is reporters space CLI, htmlextra. It is not reporters equals CLI. And again, after or before the comma, there are no spaces. So if you add anything that shouldn't be there, this will not work properly. So let's run this. And you will say here, right in the beginning, using htmlextra and which version. You're gonna get the exact same report as before. This is the CLI reporter. And additionally, if you're looking inside the current folder where we have executed this, Postman has automatically created a folder called Newman. And inside this folder Newman, we'll get the HTML report. So this is how the HTML reporter will look like. We'll get here a summary. We can look into individual requests to see what kind of data has been sent. So for example, get tools. We'll be able to inspect all the headers, any data that we have sent, what is the response that came back, how were the tests executed. And this doesn't only look very nice, but it's also a very powerful debugging tool. So in case something is not working properly, you can look here and see, oh, am I using the right URL? What kind of data am I sending? Are all Postman variables getting resolved, and so on and so forth? Super, super useful to have this reporter. If you're looking inside here, so if I go inside Newman, you probably have noticed that this reporter has this randomly generated name. And we can also decide how we can name this reporter. So this is the next step here. I'm gonna give this reporter a proper name. And as with any commands, the best way to understand which parameters are available is by quickly looking over the documentation of the respective tool. So you have the Newman documentation, which you can look over, and you have also this reporter documentation. So for example, here we will be able to specify an export path. So by using this command, I'm gonna copy this just to make sure that I don't make any mistakes. I'm gonna simply display the previous command that I had, add this additional configuration here, and I'm gonna save it inside Newman /report.html. So if I'm going inside the folder and I'm looking again at the reports available, I will see the previous report, and now I will see the report.html. The purpose of running Newman locally is to get familiar with Newman and all these reporters that you may want to use to understand how it is working before we move to the next step. So if locally it's not working properly, there's a huge chance that it will not work properly inside Jenkins. But at this point, we are pretty confident that this is working properly. The collection execution is working without any problems. We have used the Postman API to get access to this collection. So now we can look into running this in Jenkins. Jenkins is also available for various operating systems, and you can install Jenkins locally. You can use Docker to install it. You can install it natively, or you can run it completely somewhere else. There are so many ways on how you can install Jenkins, so I'm not gonna get into that. But the most important thing is at one point you should be able to see something pretty similar to this. I already have a few jobs here, but initially, more or less after the setup process, this is how Jenkins will look like. So the first step is to create a job. So I'm gonna go here and click on new item. So a new item will create a job. And what we're gonna do here is create a so-called freestyle process. This is a bit the older way how we run jobs inside Jenkins. There's also a declarative way with using a pipeline. But especially for just getting started for beginners, this is a bit easier to understand how it is working. So we're just going to give this job a name, select Freestyle Project, simply click on OK. Now, the next thing that will appear here is this configuration wizard tool, how you want to call it. And essentially here we're going to specify what this build should do. In this case, I don't have a Git repository, but if you have a Git repository, you can also clone your Git repository. For example, you could store your collection inside your Git repository, click on Git. You also have to provide some credentials, but this is not what we're going to do today. We're just going to look into how we can run Newman. So let's go here to the build step. And this is where we're going to add commands to our build. So I'm going to add here a build step. This step is very important and you need to make sure you select the right one. I am on a Unix system, so I'm going to use the shell. If you're on a Windows system, you're not going to have a shell. Probably that's not going to work. So I have to execute Windows batch command. So make sure you select the right one for your operating system where Jenkins is installed. I'm going to execute shell. And the first thing that we want to check is that we have all the dependencies that we need. So we want to make sure we have Node installed. We want to make sure that we have Newman installed. And the easiest way to see if this is working, I'm going to write something like node-version. And I'm going to also write here Newman-version. Sometimes Windows will not be able to execute both commands. So if you don't see them in the logs in the next step, you can try them one by one just to make sure that they are working properly. So I'm going to click here on save. And this job will not start automatically. I'm going to click here on build now. So this only took 1 second to execute. I can click here on the build number. And from the left-hand side menu, I can click on console output. And whenever you're working with this, it is very important that you spend some time and read the logs to understand what these scripts are doing. You will see here, I have executed node-version, so I gotten back this version. And I've executed Newman-version and gotten this back as well. If this is not working properly, check the video description because I've added some troubleshooting information there. It's quite common for this not to work on your machine. So if you're running Jenkins locally on your machine, this may not work. If Jenkins is running somewhere else, you need to make sure that these dependencies are installed. So if this is a different machine from the one you have previously installed Newman, you have to go again and install Node, install Newman, and make sure that you're getting this displayed here. Now this step is working for us without any issues, so we can go back to the job itself. I'm going to click here again on configure. And we can keep these commands here, but if you're on Windows, you may want to remove them because the third command may not get executed. So make sure that you're seeing all the commands that you have written here inside the build step. So I'm going back to my terminal and I'm simply going through the previous commands that I have executed. I'm just going to copy this entire command here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going inside here. So essentially all the parameters, everything that I had is still available. So I have Newman run. This is the path to the collection. Let's see that some question marks have been added here. So I'm not sure why that happened. We're going to check in a second if this is still working properly. So I'm going to click here on save. Let's run it. And if you just want to check what this job is doing, if it's running, you can simply click on it on this progress bar. But this one only took a few seconds. And what you will see here is more or less the same thing you have seen on your own terminal. So it's saying here that it's running these commands. You see the previous commands. Now it's using Newman run to execute the collection. You see for each individual endpoint what has happened. And finally, it's going to say here finish success. So everything worked properly. Now, as you remember, you have generated an HTML report, and that is available here inside the workspace. So simply click on workspace. You will see here Newman. And this is the report.html that has been generated. And you can take a look at the size, and you can see that this is not an empty file. And you can also click on the report itself and view it. If you're using localhost, you may get some errors, but if you're running Jenkins under a specific domain, that may look a bit better. Going back here to the build job, let's take a look at some other things that we could improve or change. Now, first of all, what I don't like is that I have secrets inside my job execution. And I don't want to expose any secrets because anything I write here will be put inside the logs. And anyone can just open this and read this information. So generally, it is a very bad idea to put secrets inside here. So I'm just gonna remove it altogether. Go back to the dashboard. I'm gonna click here on Manage Jenkins. And under Security, you should see Manage Credentials. I already have here a credential store, which is called Jenkins. I'm gonna click on it. These are global credentials. I'm gonna click on this as well. I already have some credentials here, but probably for you, this is gonna be empty. From the left-hand side, I'm gonna click on Add Credentials. And I'm gonna be asked for like, what kind of a credential is this? Username with password or something else. In this case, this is simply a secret text. The scope will be global. This is the secret. So this is the value that I previously copied. This is the token to the Postman API. And I can give it an identifier. So essentially, I'm telling like how I'm gonna identify this. So I'm gonna simply call it Postman API key, right? I also gonna copy this name. You can also give a description to specify like if there's anything else I should know about this if I may later forget why I created this. I'm gonna click here on OK. And the next step would be to go back to the job and configure it again. And here from the build tab, I'm gonna simply jump here to the commands that we had. And what we can do here is at one point, we should be able to define, I think this is in the build environment. We should be able to inject these credentials. So it says here, use secret text or files. I'm gonna check that. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna add a secret text. And from the list here, I need to specify which credential I want to use. So this is Postman API key. And I can simply name here the variable API underscore key. So this will be available as an environment variable inside my script. So I can simply go ahead here and where it says API key, I'm going to remove this. And what I'm going to write here is $. I'm going to paste here API key. So what Jenkins will do at this point, when the job starts, it will automatically read this credential, will create this environment variable. This environment variable will be used here. So let's go ahead and save it, run it again, and see if it's working properly. So no errors. And what's also important now to realize is if you're looking inside the job execution, everything is still working properly. So obviously, this credential has been injected. But if I'm looking here, you will see API key, and this credential is not available in the logs. Well, this is a very important step to ensure that this information doesn't get disclosed. So anyone reading these logs will be able to see the API key. Otherwise, in this case, this has been masked, so no one has access to it. At least no one who shouldn't have access to it. Now, there are two more things in terms of integrating this with Newman. There are two types of reports. One of them is HTML, so we have already generated that. But there's also a JUnit report. That JUnit report is something that Jenkins can read. So let me show you how we can configure that. I'm going to go here to the Newman documentation. I'm going to search for JUnit. And you will see this is a report that this is already available. So we can simply add JUnit as a reporter, but we also want to specify a path. So what we're going to need here is reporter JUnit export. And we're going to specify a path because we don't want to save it in the default path. Let's configure the job again. So add reporters, I'm gonna add JUnit. And here in the list of paths, I'm gonna add a space, reporter JUnit export. I'm gonna specify the folder which is Newman. report.xml. This is gonna be in an XML format. So -- reporter JUnit export space Newman /report.xml. Let's save it, run it again. And if everything works properly, we're going to take a look directly into the workspace. So inside the workspace, there's the Newman folder. And what we're going to get here is the report.xml. And we can also view it. We're going to see it has a size. And this is essentially a report with all the tests that we have executed. Now, why have we generated these reports? Well, we could look into the workspace and see them directly from there. But at least this XML report, this is not very useful for us because if we are gonna read this XML, it's not gonna really tell us a lot. So this is not something we have generated for us. This is something we have generated for Jenkins. So there is a way to publish this report, and this is what's called in Jenkins a post-build action. So essentially a post-build action is something that happens after the build. So the build is essentially running the collection, and then as a post-build action, we're doing something. This is called report publishing. So in this case, I'm gonna select from here the possibility of publishing a JUnit test report. So I'm gonna click on it. This additional configuration will appear here. So what we need to do here is to specify the path to this report. So we know that this report is inside Newman /report.xml. Now it is very important that you write it exactly as you see it here. If you write report somewhere else, for example, with a capital R, this is not the same file that Newman has saved. So this will not be found and the entire text execution will fail. So double check the name. It has to be exactly as you have specified in the report, exactly as you see it in your workspace. I'm going to specify it here. And simply go ahead and click on save. I'm going to click on build now. And what will happen here is that after this job is executed, this report will be published. And just after, I think, 2 or 3 executions, we should see something here on the project page. Let me refresh this page. What you will see here is essentially that all the tests are passing. So I'm going to go inside Postman and I'm going to simulate that something is not working properly. Let me close this. We don't need this anymore. So I'm going to simulate here. I'm going to simply write an endpoint that doesn't exist, right? So this is something that doesn't exist. I'm going to save it. This is automatically synchronized and available in Jenkins. And here in Jenkins, I'm going to run it again, build now. And you will see this is failing. And you will see here in red, we have tests that failed. So we have 1 test that failed, 8 of them have passed. So we can go back, let's fix this, save it, run Jenkins again. And you will see another one appearing here. There's also the possibility of publishing the HTML report. For that, we're gonna need a plugin. And if you go here inside Manage Jenkins, at one point you should see Manage Plugins. And if you go here to Available and write HTML, you'll find here the HTML publisher. You can select it, install without restart. If we go to the job, configure it again, and look at the post-build actions. The one post-build action has been publishing the JUnit test report. We have another action here, which is publishing HTML reports. And the way this is working is pretty similar to JUnit, so I'm not going to go too much into this, but the advice is still the same. Make sure that you specify the right path for this one. So this is how you can execute your Postman collection inside Jenkins by defining a job and using Newman for automation purposes. I hope that this tutorial was helpful, and if this was the case, give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment in the section below. Definitely check the video description because it is filled with very useful resources, and essentially everything I'm talking about in this tutorial is also available in the resources. Hope to see you next time. Bye bye.